Hello, on tonight's show, we talk about the crisis of petrol as it starts all over again with the crisis of toilet roll 2 years ago. It's petrol now. See what we think and what our views on the whole pandemic is. Also, we talk about a man raising money for charity, but doing something quite unusual and getting naked. But in the year of 2021, do we need to embrace our bodies a little bit more? And we finish on that taboo subject that has been going on for years. We talk about disability. And do we need proof to see disability to really think somebody is disabled? All that on tonight's show. Joining me, hello and welcome to Loose Links. Joining me for the next hour on keeping you entertained is Rob Price, Jason Lambert, and Vicky Pearson. As we talk about on the show this week, bins collections across North Lincolnshire are prioritised to make sure your bins are empty. But should they really be prioritised a bin collection? Find out our views. Also, we talk about a man that's embracing his body for charity as he does cycling, running and swimming, all naked. But do we need to embrace our bodies in the year of 2021, or are we just still hiding away? And we finish on quite a difficult subject that's still going across the world, even in Lincolnshire, as we talk about disability and what disability means to all of us. All that on tonight's show. Good evening and welcome, panel. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, how are we all doing? First of all, a massive thank you to Vicky Pearson. She's literally just stepped in last minute. We were supposed to have David Ranston. I can never say their surname correctly. We waved to you. Unfortunately, his internet went down this evening and couldn't join us. So Vicky has stepped in literally 2 minutes ago. So thank you very, very much, Vicky. Welcome, Rob, new panellist, another new member to the family. Good evening. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
Are you feeling excited?
I wouldn't have gone quite that far, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
As we've got loads to talk about, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the world of Facebook and social media has gone down this evening. Messenger doesn't seem to be working. Facebook doesn't seem to be working. So unfortunately, we cannot get the results of the polls. We will have a look the following evening to see if I can do a live just to announce the polls. So your poll results will be revealed sometime this week, so we apologise for that. But let's get onto our first debate. So, bin collections across the North East Lincolnshire will be unaffected by the panic buying of petrol, the council said. Local authorities in parts of the country have been forced to cancel some waste collections due to the demand for fuel. Now, before we get into this, there are going to be some heated people about fuel out there. So please remember, you are the fifth panelist, so please join in with the conversation. I think it's got absolutely, utterly ridiculous on the queues of people that are just panic fuel buying. It's like toilet roll 2 years ago. But let's go to you, Rob. With all this going on and all the panic buying of petrol, do you think it's now time to completely get rid of petrol and diesel and go electric?
I'll give you a guarded yes. I think moving over to electric vehicles is a good idea. I've got an electric vehicle myself. I'm on my second electric vehicle. But these things have got to be done in a logical and organic manner. You can't just flick a switch and everybody leap over to electric. It won't work. The infrastructure isn't there. The power stations aren't there. You'll just end up with an almighty mess. So the basic thrust of your question, my answer is yes, but it's got to be a guarded yes, and it's got to be done in a logical way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, actually. I think that, I mean, even there's charge stations all over the place. I do think it's getting better. I mean, even I love a good Lidl shop, and Lidl's got like 3 of the little stations at the back, and but 3 of them isn't going to suit it when there's an entire car park full of people with electric needing to charge up. I know on the disability motability scheme they started including the electric vehicles for part of the motability scheme, which is really positive. Been having a look at some of those. And Lincolnshire, I mean, weren't we featured on Top Gear for having like the least amount of electrical charge stations in the country? I mean, which I'm not surprised about, because Lincolnshire's like a whole world to itself sometimes. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful. I mean, if you look at the streets, they've got rows and rows of terraced houses. Exactly where are they going to charge their cars if they go to electric? Unless they start putting them all along the street, putting them out on the street, people are going to have to charge from the inside of the house with the wire leading to the car. As Rob said, there's no infrastructure in the country. I mean, Vicky was just talking about Lincolnshire being an entire country to itself. Yeah, I live in Norfolk, and Norfolk is an entire county to its own rights. I mean, there's very, very few charging points in Norfolk, and the villages are so widespread, it's just crazy, really.
Do you think we're just having a different crisis? Do you think I've recently been out with somebody with an electric car and been to the Lidl. There are many other supermarkets. Can I just mention that? But I've been to the Lidl charging point. But I think we're just going to have another crisis. Like, for him to charge his car, it was like an hour sat at this station, where with petrol you're in and out, aren't you? You fill your car and off you go. So do you think that we would just have another crisis of people queuing and queuing and queuing to charge their electric cars? Yes.
Well, there's talk of them producing 50 kilowatt and 100 kilowatt chargers. Now, as things stand at the moment, most cars won't take that. That would just fry the battery. But it's coming. You know, these things are going to get quicker and quicker. You get like 100, a car with a 500-mile radius that's going to be charged in 20 minutes. But this is all in the future. It's going to take time. And also,
have we got time, Rob? This is the thing.
Well, yes. I mean, that's another good question, because you look at the national grid and the power stations they're going to have to build. Boris Johnson's telling us today that by 2035, the entire national grid is going to be run on renewables. A large proportion of that is going to come from nuclear power stations. Well, he likes to think he can build a nuclear power station in 10 years. He's living in cloud cuckoo land for close to 25. It's just not going to happen. So it's going to take time.
I don't think the British public are that au fait with nuclear power stations.
No.
I mean, we've got Sizewell B in Norfolk, and now they want to build Sizewell C at the side of it. And the opposition to that in Norfolk is massive. They really don't want part of the coastline taken by another nuclear power station and to be built on green belt land. So we're still not au fait with the whole nuclear thing. And I think it's going to take a while for the public to actually want to trust nuclear. I mean, if you look at Fukushima, when they had that surge and it leaked, people get panicked about the nuclear reactors and leaking, and I think people have a real issue with that.
Yeah, and you've got to look at nuclear waste as well. I mean, they're currently looking to build a nuclear waste dump in Mablethorpe, right next to where everyone goes on holiday at the moment, and the plans are going through for that. And I mean, who wants a nuclear dump anywhere near where they are, let alone where you're going to go on holiday and people have got caravans and, your kids are swimming in the sea and, nuclear waste doesn't disappear. It's like plastic. It's not sustainable in itself at all. I mean, it's a tricky one when it comes to going back to the point with would everyone go crazy? Because half of me thinks then, well, it just take a bit of common sense to maybe plan your day a little bit more. I mean, looking at it, you just charge it overnight or you charge it while you're doing your shopping. Then the other half of me says, I don't think British common sense exists anymore, because we've seen the last few years it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, if people are going out there and filling up with fuel, and people, I had a friend say they turned up at a petrol station, there was an ambulance queuing and no one had let the ambulance through. You just think, what is going on? Like, surely just let the ambulance go first. Nobody's day is more important than an emergency service vehicle, as much as you might like to think it is, you know. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of people in this country now need leading, and I don't think we have leadership right now. And I think that's where the problem's coming from. There's nobody taking clear leadership and actually telling people what should be done and how things should be done. And I think if you've got to get the army involved in anything, you've lost control. If you're getting the army involved in your own country to make things run, then you have lost control.
It could be like a bad pair of Y fronts. Chernobyl fallout.
I had a friend the other day.
To follow.
I had a friend the other day tell me went in a petrol station to fill up, and there was a guy with an Audi A3, A4, 4-litre engine, and he got £5.60 worth of petrol, because that's all he needed.
Wow. But Vicky, I want to pick up a bit on what you said about ambulances and stuff like that. If we go back to the pandemic 2 years ago, key workers were looked upon, and carers and key workers and people of NHS and all of that. But this time round, we've gone into another crisis of petrol. And what local authorities have thought of giving the leadership of getting to the pump first is bin men. Now, I'm not saying at all, I'm not saying that if you're a binman out there, you're not important. You, of course, you are important. You are essential to our counties staying clean and nice. But in the sort of way, do you think that we need to rethink about maybe key workers getting to the pump before any of it? Because I am a key worker, but I'm not a driver. But I would be quite happy to step back and say, okay.
But the emergency vehicles aren't topped up at public filling stations, are they? They've got their own supplies. Ambulances and fire engines and police cars don't go to public filling stations.
What about people that go into people's homes looking after them, though, Rob? What about those sort of key workers that are out in the community supporting people?
Sorry, I thought we were talking about ambulances. You confused me.
Yeah. See, I'm keeping you on your toes.
See, now, when it comes to bins, the interesting thing is one of the biggest issues that local councils have to deal with the general public is bins and dog poo. Those are the two single biggest issues. Third would be potholes. Those are the three main issues that people contact the council about and have a real issue and will kick off at. So it's interesting with bins. And if you don't stay on top of that, I know it seems like it's a silly thing, but it escalates very quickly. And it's one of the, it's part of the pillars of society. You wouldn't believe that bin men and having your rubbish taken out is one of the parts that keeps society functioning, but it's actually massively important. I think for me, you've got to change the question a little bit, and that this situation shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be in this situation. If we'd had people actually on top of what's going on, if the media had been briefed and not sensationalized things, and I don't think it's the media's fault at all. I feel that that's their leading with what information they've been given. I just think the whole situation's been massively mishandled, and key workers should get it. People with disabilities should get it, who can't leave the house without a car. They're not even in the looking. No one's even talking about people that can't walk, and that need a car as an essential, service in a way. And then you're looking at carers. I've heard stuff from carers where, they've been unable to get to elderly patients who require, serious care, different issues that they can't just be left overnight. It is going to affect absolutely everything, really. And the situation, I don't think it's a case of which one should we choose. I feel that it's the situation shouldn't be where it is,
Yeah, I think we've got the problem of the fact that we don't have leadership. I mean, when Boris was asked this question about key workers being given priority to the pumps like they were 20 years ago, he said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to give key workers priority. And going back to ambulances and things like that, Not all ambulance stations have their own petrol pumps. I know one in Norfolk doesn't. They have to queue for petrol. But I think, how far do you go if you say you're giving priority to key workers? Do we say ambulance crews, carers, and people like that are the key workers, or do we include supermarket workers in that, like we did when the pandemic said that key workers were supermarket workers? Are they included in it as well? How far do you go with key workers for priority within the groups? I mean, how far down do you go?
I don't think it's the answer really. The answer is to make the system work. It's not to get. It shouldn't be need to be giving priority to anybody. You should when the system works, it works, and there's no need to give priority to anybody, is there?
No.
Well, I agree and I sort of disagree. I just think that we're not. I've said this many times on the show, and I still stand by it. Really, is that I felt the whole nation changed for the better for COVID. So when COVID hit, I hate talking about COVID because you hear it on every other show, but sometimes you just can't seem to avoid it, can you? But when we think about COVID, we came together as a nation. It was like I remember my own grandma's stories about being there for your neighbour, knocking on the door. I felt like all of that came back because of COVID. The looking out for the community, the gathering together, the clapping on your doorstep, all of that came back. And I'm not saying that we're out of COVID, because we're not, but we are opening our doors to the next normal. But I just think we've gone back to it again. We've gone back to not caring. We've gone back to me, myself, and I. We've gone back to just looking out for ourselves. It seems like community spirit has disappeared again.
Well, I think in some ways it was a bit of a mirage that anything had changed. What happened mostly with COVID was that the poor got poorer and the rich got richer. Overwhelmingly, that's what happened with COVID. The poor died and got poorer, and the rich lined their pockets.
Yeah, I think we. I don't know whether it was more like a forced coming together, because we couldn't get out and we wanted to be able to see people. We are a society that thrives on meeting other people and seeing friends and family, and we are a society that craves touch. So I think it was a forced everybody getting back out and seeing each other. But I think we are struggling with the government telling us, don't panic. There's no. Well, as soon as they say that, you just go, okay, there's a problem. And then when they go, there's no problem with foods on the shelves, we all go, there's a problem. Says there isn't a problem, there is a problem.
And that comes down to, again, is how much trust does the general public have in the people that are leading the country? Do you believe them? And do you feel that your life is in safe hands by trusting and following blindly whatever is told? I mean, I don't think a lot's being said, to be honest. I think it's little bits coming out and people are having to kind of look out for yourself. I mean, we bought a second freezer when the Brexit vote came through, so that we're always a month ahead. So regardless of what happens, we've always kind of got that. And to be honest, when the COVID stuff went crazy and the supermarket shelves were empty, we didn't leave the house for a month. We just lived on what we'd already stored up, just in case, and I think that's a smart move, and I mean, I'd say I'm quite lucky. I've said this before, our community is amazing and we have a really good community spirit, but that's because I live in a small village and everyone knows everybody, and it's very different to the dynamics of a city or a town, so for me, I don't really feel community spirit has gone away, because we always had it, to some degree, and it's changed in a way, but we've got quite a nice community group, but I do think that unfortunately with the way things are going, you do also have to look out for yourself, because things aren't going well, and I think that is how things are going to go, isn't it? I mean, I'm a big fan of a good apocalyptic movie. I mean, you just watch any of those and you know that once people lose kind of faith in stuff, I guess, and that they don't know what's going on, then it's make sure your family's going to be all right. And I think a lot of British people are kind of in that mindset that I just need to make sure my family's okay.
But Vicky, do you? Sorry, Rob. Go on. Sorry.
No. No, I was only going to say something frivolous. I was only going to say that. Does that mean we're waiting on Bruce Willis or something?
But Vicky, do you think we're turning into a nation more and more about greed than about being there for each other? Do you think the UK is quite greedy in what we get? We always seem to be wanting more.
So now you're asking somebody who's like really nerdy about politics here this question, and this is going to be difficult to discuss without going really deep, but we are sliding further to, you know, and I hate the left and right because I don't really see politics in the left and right. I think that's just really, you know, it's an easy way to see it, but you know, there's things that I agree with certain people whose politics are very different. There's other things that I really strongly disagree with, you know, and but we are sliding further in that way, and the right is more individual and the left is more community, and as a nation we have kind of moved that to that more American system, which is all, you know, based upon the Wild West and freedom and, you know, doing what you want and having autonomy and being more selfish in a way, you know, look out for yourself, you know. And if we were looking at more community, we'd be looking at more things like, you know, a fully funded NHS, and we'd be looking at energy companies that are governed by you know, the actual government that's provided for the people, and the profits are going back into the business, not into shareholders' pockets, you know. So we are sliding more to that way where everyone looks out for themselves, and I don't think a lot of people are going to like it if we end up going that way. I don't think people really understand what that is and how difficult that is, and this is where we're heading right now. I mean, a hard Brexit is far right, and it is individual, it is cutting off our connections, it is cutting off the way we work with people in other countries, and it is doing things for ourselves. And this is doing things for ourselves. This is queuing at petrol stations. This is no toilet roll. This is, you know, the collapse of a lot of things that we used to enjoy, you know.
Are you familiar with the... Oh, sorry, go on, Jason.
Go on, Jason.
Boris tells us we're in a transition period. That's all the country's going through. A transition period.
Yes, but we are, but where are we going?
Well, I don't think he knows.
Are any of you familiar with the work of Adam Curtis?
No.
You know, he's a filmmaker. There's quite a few of his films on BBC iPlayer if you've got access to that. I recommend that you go and look at some of his work. He's very clever, very astute. One of the things he deals with is what he calls hypernormalization, which sounds like a big word. Well, it is a big word. Which is when you become so engrossed, so part of a system that you can't see beyond it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you end up with like this socio-economic system that we sit in, that you can't see a way beyond. You just go along, you keep going along with the madness, even though it makes no sense. And it's clear that it makes no sense. You just keep going along with it because you can't. You've been steeped in it for so long, you can't see beyond it. It's worth watching. It's very clever.
Definitely. But remember, you are the fifth panel member out there. Tell us what you think. Do you think we're turning into a nation of greed? Do you think key workers should be at the front of the pump? And what key workers would you choose? Have you also make sure you have your conversation with friends and family of yours, and then share your view on our page. We love to hear from you. Stay tuned, as later on in the show we talk about Cleethorpes, as Vicky's already brought it up, but Cleethorpes are extending a train line from Cleethorpes to the beach, so it's more accessible for some people. But that got us thinking, in Lincolnshire, are we good with disability? And do we judge before we even know somebody? So stay tuned for that. But we go on a little bit of a lighter topic. A man in Lincolnshire will race naked across the county in a team with another stranger in a new outdoor adventure competition with a twist, airing on E4 next week. Ryan Blake, 23, will feature on the first episode of Naked, Alone and Racing to get home at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of October. The show sees two pair of strangers strip off their clothes and race in the buff across the countryside to win a cash prize. Well, this got me thinking.
It did.
Let's go to you first, Jason. Do you think we should just embrace our bodies a little bit more and just get naked?
Personally, no. I don't think I would ever do it, and especially not as it's getting as cold as it is now. I wouldn't be stripping off at all, and I don't race anywhere, so definitely not for me. I think if people wish to get naked in their own home, that is fine. I'm not so sure flaunting and wafting around in the middle of a street or a city or countryside with all the animals is a particularly clever idea. But I mean, if that's what floats your boat, then yeah, feel free.
This is really, I feel like that naughty schoolboy in school. But do you think that we body issues are getting worse within, let's take it on a serious note, body issues and weight problems and stuff like that are getting worse in the UK? Do you think that we're not, that we hide away, that we try and put on as much clothing and it's embarrassing and it's more difficult in the year that we're in now to embrace our bodies and get naked?
I think there's many answers to that, aren't there? First is, I think if you look at, particularly on social media, there's a lot of very hateful, spiteful name calling goes on, and I think that's a damn shame, and I'd love to be able to stamp that out. But equally, on the other hand, I think everybody's got a body. You know, why do we make such a fuss about it? Nudity is such a, it's almost like a school playground kind of subject. It's just childish. My body's not so different from yours or the next bloke's, and I just think, why is it important? But to come back to your charity runner in the Buff, I'd ask, so often with charity events, people have to do silly things to persuade people to part with the money. You know, we have people walking from Land's End to John O'Groats, and people jumping out of planes, and people doing all kinds of ridiculous things. Now we've got somebody jogging across the county naked. Why? If you want to give money to charity, give money to charity. Why do you need somebody to do something ridiculous to persuade you to do so?
See, now we actually, and I'm wondering if he's local to Bardney, because we actually have a problem with a local runner that runs naked through Bardney and along the cycle path along the River Foss. And it's always discussed on our little village notice board that has been seen, and people need to make sure their children are not out at this part of the day. So it might not just be a stunt, it might just be this guy's finding a reason to justify, you know, they don't really, I don't know, it's a bit of a murky area. I'm not up on the law on that sort of thing, but
Vicky, if I stood up now and dropped my trousers, what? But you know, it would reveal to you that I have genitalia. Now, you already know that I have genitalia, don't you? I mean, come on, I'm sitting here, you know I'm a bloke, so you know I've got genitalia. So what have I actually revealed to you? I've revealed nothing. What do you know before that you didn't know after?
No, and I think the thing is we are, I know we're similar, but we are all very different people, and people do different things, enjoy different things, participate in different things. So you know, it's a tough one. I mean, going back to social media, I think it also depends what social circles you're in and who your influencers are. And I don't mean influencers as in YouTube influencers. I mean the people that you actually respect and listen to and follow. I mean, I have a lot of incredibly empowering women that are in my social circle that I find quite influencing. I have artists who celebrate bodies, that do, you know, a lot of nude arts that celebrate bigger women or disabled women or things like that, and I think it's absolutely amazing. And I've seen a lot about disability and, you know, people celebrating the fact that although they're in a wheelchair, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, for myself, I find it difficult because I used to be an athlete. I used to be incredibly fit. And, you know, I put a lot of work into my body being a tool. And then I had a car accident, and then I had health issues, and it all deteriorated. So for me, it's a very difficult issue because my body isn't what it used to be, and I haven't quite come to terms with that yet. And that's more my issue. I don't look on anyone else and see anything negative about them. I think it's brilliant. I love confident, you know, I'm going to say women because that's my circles, I guess, but people who are confident with who they are, I think that's absolutely fantastic. But I know I don't get magazines anyway, and ever, like, at all, let alone fashion magazines. I don't follow any of these, you know, trends. I don't really follow influencers. I'm much more about what people are doing and giving back to the world than what they look like. And I mean, my partner has to play charades with me when I'm trying to remember who somebody is, because I haven't got a clue, or a pop song will come on and I don't know who sang it because I'm just not in that environment. I don't follow those people. So it's easier for me to say that because of who my circles are. But then there's going to be a lot of people who are in those circles that probably are seeing more of that toxicity, you know. But it is being called out more. There was an article recently on a photographer that called out a model and saying she needed to starve herself for 2 weeks before she came back to the next shot so that she could get in idea. And she called him out on social media, and it went mad. People were not happy with that because that shouldn't be happening anymore. So I mean, I'd say people are more able to call out this behavior now, and it is becoming, people are allowed to be proud of who they are and not expect to look a certain way they were, compared to the years following 2000, that decade. I think things were much worse then, and women were highly sexualized. Men's bodies were highly sexualized more than they are now. I think we're heading in a good direction, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's difficult because personally, I don't feel, I certainly wouldn't do this show in the buff, and I wouldn't want to get naked. It's just not something that I would be comfortable with. I definitely wouldn't be comfortable in getting naked with a stranger and then running across the countryside. And I'd have trouble getting naked myself, let alone having somebody else at the side of me to strip off as well. I mean, because without being too open about it, there's always the comparison between two people. If they're two males, there is comparison between them. I mean, does this runner, is he buff and is he fit and is he really buff? And the person, the kind of interviewed people who are muscular and that kind of thing, is that what they're going for, or are they going for all different body shapes, both larger, smaller, curvy, whatever? And I think we need to be careful on social media because people do filter their pictures to make them look really nice, really beautiful, to get the likes. And I think that sometimes causes us problems because people, if they don't get the right comments, feel that they've either got to lose weight or they've got to change the teeth or the hair needs to be done. Or it's that social media intense pressure that more youngsters really feel more than older people. I think the teenagers and late teens, 20s really find that a real problem because they want to be liked so much.
I feel really bad about this because this is a new panelist, but Rob, I disagree with you again. Only on the fact of that I think it's the way. I want to go back to your original comment about we're just bodies and we should just accept it and I think it was very much the way you were brought up as a child. I envy that. I envy people that just don't care, that just, this is me, this is how I am, this is my shape, I like it, if you don't, bog off. Now I have gone further down my personal journey now, that I don't need acceptance of other people as much, but that has still not gone completely yet. That nervous, that need of being liked is still there. But I've always struggled with my body. But I came from a house where both parents were kind of big. Both parents occasionally use the word fat, in the house and stuff like that. So I think it's the way that you were brought up and taught and talked about food and body shape and body size in your own home to who you are today as a person with food. Because I will always say now, I don't control food, food controls me. And I feel like I'm completely, nearly all the time on a diet, nearly all the time trying, oh, I can't eat this, or I've had a bacon sandwich, I need to go for a run. But I think it's about that environment, because my best friend is very much like you. He doesn't care. He's like, I don't care if I put on 5 stone in the next year. But I think it's the environment you're in. Do you agree, panel?
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
And that's where I slightly disagree a little bit. But Rob, let's go back to you. Do you agree that everyone should have a long social media break? Completely come off social media completely?
No, I don't think that solved anything.
No? Not a thing for you?
Because I think everything would be the same when you came back. Folk could be saying, where have you been? And then start up again as we were. I don't think they'd achieve anything.
See, now I used to live in Indiana over the summer while I was at university. I used to finish in April and fly out to Indiana in end of September. I used to run a horse ranch out there and teach underprivileged kids that kind of had their week and a range of other children. And we didn't have access to really there was no Wi-Fi, there was no radio signal, there was no television, there was no newspapers were delivered. If on special occasions, occasionally, as I was a director of my program, I was allowed into a room that had a television. But I think we were allowed to watch the Olympics one year on that. It wasn't like a thing we did. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm a massive nerd. Anyone that knows me or has even watched me on this show will know that I'm a massive nerd. I mean, I built my own PC, I design websites, I write code. This is just something I love. And I loved the fact that I had 4 months off a year. And I was probably the happiest that I've ever been, really, consistently while I was out there doing that. And, I'd like to have a break where I go away and just take books because I love reading, and do that. But I do agree that when I come back, I am massively addicted. I am hugely addicted to technology. I game, I'm on social media, I'm on my PC. I'm not into television and things, but it is very much a bit of an addiction. I don't know if everyone needs that. I think it's down to personal choice.
Do you think it is an addiction, though? That's a really good point. Do you think, like, alcohol's an addiction, drugs an addiction, gambling's an addiction? Do you think there really is a social media addiction, and we need to start tackling it? It's a rush of endorphins. I mean, I have ADHD as well, and we're particularly susceptible to video games and technology because our brains struggle with serotonin and endorphin levels. So the internet, computer games and things give us that rush that we can't get in ordinary life, which is why you'll find people who do have, things like ADHD find it that they spend a lot of time in these areas because it does reward us with something we are lacking. And I think other people that don't have that probably, have a similar experience. And, a lot of people are putting stuff out there because they like the responses. They're not there because they care what the response is as such. Obviously not negative, but they just like the fact that somebody is responding and they're getting that endorphin rush. I don't know about treatment. I think you need to know if you have an issue. I mean, I don't like having my phone on me at all times. So if I'm at home, I'll be using it. If I'm out and about, I don't. So for me, I wouldn't say that was an addiction because I do. Nobody rings you though, Vicky, apart from me.
No, because I've educated everyone in my life to know to leave me alone. I don't like people calling me, and I've conditioned everybody and make them aware of that. You are the only person that calls me, and I'm totally happy with that. Send me an email and I'll reply when I want to. That's just where I am. And I know a lot of people are not like that, but, me and my partner didn't have a phone for about 1.5 years at one point. And everywhere we went, we said, oh, we don't have a mobile phone. And people were like, sorry, you don't have a mobile phone? I'm like, no. How do you meet people? Well, I arranged to meet people at 1 p.m. by the Stone Bow in Lincoln and they turn up. You know, it's what we did in the 90s. It's just people don't understand and can't function like that anymore. So I wouldn't say I have an addiction because of I can do that, but I do know that if I'm sat at home, I have a problem with social media because of, you know, it feeds that. And I think it depends on the person. If somebody genuinely cannot put their phone down, if you're walking into a lamppost while you're walking down the street because you can't look up from your phone, maybe you need to start looking into it.
I think we're very lucky to have you, Vicky, tonight.
We're lucky to have you. Rob, was you going to say something?
Oh, just that I think it's habituation to an addiction.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because I do think that, because I had a similar experience to you, Vicky. I went to Africa for 3 weeks, and I was determined not to take any technology with me. I didn't want to take it out there at all. Did I miss it? Yes. Did I feel disconnected? Yes. But in the same way, and I've said this many times on the show, and I'm sure you'll get bored of hearing this, but when I went to Africa, community spirit and being there for one another and looking out for each other and just being together was just more amazing than any social media app that I would ever look at, about the just coming together and like we were a group of Christians that went, and people would come in the morning to wherever we were building and leave their children with us for the day. Literally leave their child and off they went, and would return at like 5 o'clock. You would not see that in the UK. If one person looks at a child wrong in the UK, there's arguments, there's the police involved, there's this, that, and the other. Don't tell me how to parent. And I don't feel, it's going back to that question again. I just don't feel that we're together anymore. I think we're more social media. Like, we don't really like meeting friends anymore, do we? When it comes to now social media and stuff like that, it's easier to send somebody a text message or FaceTime them or WhatsApp them or Facebook them than to actually make an arrangement and go and see them for coffee, because that's just 10 times easier than sending a message.
Well, with COVID, you've got to be a 2 meter distance. And
and social and that all gone now, and social distancing all been erupted now, in that you can get near people. But I still wear a mask, but there's a lot of people that don't.
I still wear a mask wherever I go, especially supermarkets or shops or things like that. And I've not been out to a club or a pub since they've opened.
But let's not go down the road of COVID. But have your say on our debate. Do you think that we need to embrace our bodies a little bit more? Do you think body issues are still very apparent and still need heavily tackling? Please have your say. It's just as important as ours. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, or you can email us. I keep forgetting that actually we've still got an email address. It's looselinks@gmail.com. Make sure you have your say and we will read them out in the show. So we've got quite a hard-hitting topic as a last topic, and I can almost be sure that Vicky will now turn into the anchor for this next topic, because I'm sure she'll have a lot to say about it. But we talk about visitors arriving in Cleethorpes by train will soon have direct access to the beachfront, as Newark Rail is installing a footbridge to connect the station to the beach. This did get us thinking, with disability rising, even within Lincolnshire, are we doing enough? So Vicky, let's come to you first. Do you think as Lincolnshire that we are judging far too quick if we don't see a disability?
Yeah, I mean, there's a massive attitude around it. As somebody who was, like I said before, very, very physically fit and able, going from that to somebody that lost just everything, and even internalized within myself. I mean, when I had to use a wheelchair for the first time, because I had to admit to myself I could no longer walk and be well, afterwards it would make me very, very ill. My legs work, I'm not paraplegic. I have a condition, and part of my issues is I get things like concussion if I stand up or sit up for too long. So to go around a supermarket, I need to use a wheelchair. To do anything more than kind of 15-20 meters really reliably, I need to use a wheelchair. And the first time I used a wheelchair, I cried for half an hour, and my friend was pushing me and she didn't know, she's chattering away about all sorts, and I was just silently sobbing because I felt like I was less of a person. And that, as you know, that is, I think a lot of people would feel the same. I think a lot of people internalize this view of disabled people, that somehow they are lesser, you know, and it's only when you end up in that situation, which anybody could at any point in time. You can have mine was a car accident, could happen to anybody, you know, that suddenly you're thrust into this world, and it's a whole learning curve, you know. And I mean, if you put in things like the fact that I've got issues with my stomach, so I have to eat in certain places, eat certain diets, and I use a wheelchair, there's 3 restaurants in Lincoln that I can get into, that I have access to, and one of them closed down due to COVID and financial issues, you know, and that's incredible in a city, you know. And I went to a restaurant once, and we were sat there for an hour, and they were seating other people, and we were ignored by the people who were in the restaurant. We had to leave because they were obviously just had a really horrific opinion of me being in a wheelchair, and you know, and they were refusing to serve me. And you think, this sounds insane, but this is real. This has happened. This is reality right now. And before I was in that situation, I thought, what an amazing country we were, that everything's accessible. There's ramps everywhere. You see them everywhere. It's not until you actually need to use those services that you realise it isn't, you know, or that they haven't been maintained, or, you know, there's a concrete lip somewhere that's just dropped away because people have walked there a lot, and suddenly a wheelchair can't get over it. You know, and I always make it, because I'm obviously a bit of an activist, and I have an opinion, obviously, that I air a lot, and I often feel that I'm a bit of an advocate for a lot of things, specifically disability. So the fact that I can stand up out of my chair and walk to my car and get in my car, I'll put my wheelchair at the back of the car and make sure people are regularly seeing somebody can stand up out of a wheelchair and walk to their car, just to get that into people's heads, that not everybody who uses a wheelchair is paraplegic. You know, I mean, last year I had to have the police involved because I had somebody sexually harassing me as a disabled person. It's actually another woman, and she was being really, really horrific. It was traumatic what was done and what was said, because she was fetishizing disabled people in their sex lives, and they felt the need to broadcast this and tag me and take photos off my profile and make memes, and it got really nasty. And it was blew my mind that was even a situation you can end up in, you know, because there's a lot of people, and they do see disabled people as secondary. Just look at COVID, and you say, oh well, you know, most people that died had health conditions. That is right there is the attitude of people in this country towards people who have disabilities, because those are people's daughters, people's nans, people's brothers and sisters. Those are your friends that you're saying it doesn't matter that those people died of COVID because they have a health condition anyway. So we shouldn't protect those people, you know. So there is a massive issue in this country. And other people always say to me all the time, oh, it's worse in other countries. It is, but I'm in this country, and I can do stuff or highlight things in this country, you know, and it is a massive issue. I mean, ironically, they're putting a bridge to make train services more accessible, but they're also, you know, the Conservative government's taking away the mandate for public travel companies to have disabled access onto vehicles at the moment. You know, people can't get off trains. They're going on train journeys. I was actually invited for tea at the House of Lords over something I was doing. I was really excited. It cost me £90 for my train ticket. And, you know, and I was going down, there was about 4 or 5 of us who were going to go and have a tour around the House of Parliament. It was amazing. And I couldn't get on the train, so I couldn't go, and they wouldn't refund me my ticket. So I lost £90 and couldn't go to London for the day because of accessibility issues, you know, and I didn't get an apology. They said that's just, you just got to learn to deal with that, you know. And this was 4 years ago, I think, maybe 5, you know, so it's not that long ago, and things have got worse, you know. So yeah, I don't think people quite realize how bad things are, I mean, if you want to look at anything, I mean, my personal hero at the moment is Rosie Jones. I don't know if you know Rosie Jones, the comedian. She's on the Last Leg a lot, which is a fantastic disability news program that I think everybody should watch because it's hilarious. And you know, it really highlights a lot of the issues disabled people look at. But if you go and search Rosie Jones's recent speech after going to the Paralympics, it is just incredible. You know, and I recommend everybody just go and research some of Rosie Jones's recent speeches if you want to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because people jump on people because they can't see a disability. Hidden disabilities are probably the worst because somebody can't see somebody's got a disability. If they suddenly see them at a disabled parking spot or something like that, they jump on them because there's no crutch or there's no wheelchair, but there is a reason that a hidden disability. I mean, I have a disability, but it's a hidden disability. You don't see it because it doesn't really manifest itself physically outwardly, but inside it's there, and I know it's a lifelong condition that will degenerate as I get older. And it moves quickly, and some people it moves slower. Mine's quite a slow moving one, but it's a hidden disability that people don't know and don't see. And it's very difficult to try and get people to understand. And if it's a disability that people don't understand at all, that when you give them a name for it and you say, well, actually, mine is myotonic dystrophy, people just look at you as if to say, what on earth is that? And I mean, you even have to educate. I've had to educate my own doctors in my condition because they don't know about it. I actually now go to the hospital in Norwich and actually help third-year medical students in neurology, where I actually go in and they have to diagnose what my condition is without me telling them what it is, just from symptoms, because it's such a strange condition that they may not never see one in their life, or they may see one in their whole lifetime as a doctor, and it helps them to understand what it is, and then they're taught about it, and it just helps. But we do find, I think, in the country as a whole, people do jump to conclusions very quickly if they can't see a physical manifestable thing about a disability.
But it makes my blood boil. I am sat here and my blood is boiling because I think, like, when I've just listened to you both, Vicky, why should you have a wheelchair in the back of the car to prove you are a disabled person? Why, Jason, do you need to be proving to people that I have a disability and I have a right? Very, very different topics. But if somebody got divorced, you would not be stood there asking them the insides out of why their relationship has failed, why they've gone through a divorce, what has actually happened, how did you get to that point? Why do we have a right as a nation to be questioning people when they say they have a disability? It's hard enough to accept the disability and to try and fit into a nation that doesn't really allow disability to come forward. And it absolutely infuriates me that people feel they have the right to question somebody if they park in a disabled car parking space, if they don't have a blue badge, if they've seen them crutches one day and not crutches the next day. Who are you to judge anybody in that sort of way? We wouldn't judge other people in other aspects of their life. And I just find this absolutely infuriating. I had an incident a couple of years ago. It was a good couple of years ago. I worked in a disabled school, and I was walking round a supermarket with a Down syndrome lad. And I was having a walk around this supermarket. I was walking around, and this woman walked past and tutted. Now, I said nothing to begin with, and I walked that little bit further, and I gave the child that I was looking after to a colleague, and just went back and said to the woman and tapped the woman on the shoulder and said, "Can I just ask why you just tutted?" my student, and she said people like that should not be in places like this, which was my retaliation of people like you should be put down for saying stuff like that, because you have no right at all to judge anybody's lifestyle or the way they live.
Can I just respond to you on the question of why? I think it comes back quite simply to what you were saying before about greed. Providing facilities for disabled people costs money. And the resentment that those services are provided out of the public purse is just driven by greed. Why should I pay for, you know, ramps and a special bridge across Cleethorpes to get you to the bridge or whatever? It's all just driven by that greed. I want to. It's you know, this is. I'm all right, Jack. Keep your hands off my stack. That's the answer. It's just driven by greed. So it comes back to what we were discussing earlier. That's the reason why. It's just that resentment. You're getting something for nothing, and I'm having to pay for it.
And the irony is, I mean, I went through the PIP's procedure, and I got turned down for PIP, or I got given the lowest rate, I think, and I put a mandatory reconsideration in, which, you know, everyone says is just turned down regardless. They barely look at it, which they did. And then I went through to go and have an appeal, and the DWP put off my appeal for 3 years. They kept cancelling it and cancelling it and cancelling it and putting it back. And then a week before one of the court hearings that was scheduled, they wrote to me and said they'd looked at existing information and decided that actually I was eligible all along for what I should have been getting, and they awarded me a backdated payment. But because of that 3 years, I'd had to take out high interest loans to buy adapted equipment so that I could actually get out and do things. And the money from that backdate went back to paying off interest rates from high interest loans that I shouldn't have had to get in the first place, because I should have been able to have this funding to buy this stuff and been able to, you know, not been in that situation. And the fact I had to go through that for 3 years, and because of that, you don't have access to other things that require, you know, a PIP certification to say that you've got that, you know, and the trauma of having to go into courtrooms and answer those questions, you know, when the own government is persecuting you for, you know, certain, if you've got certain disabilities that are very well known and understood, it's a different experience. But if you've got something that's not as well understood, and maybe the person that comes to do your assessment is a physiotherapist, you know, or a paramedic, and they're doing the assessment in 20 minutes on whether they believe you or not, and it's not, you know, you have all your doctor's notes, you have all your medical notes, you have everything provided, but then they interview you to make sure that you're not lying, because you're presumed guilty before, you know, you can receive that funding and that, you know, the access, you know, certain things like Motability provides you priority recovery on the roadside. So if I get in an accident, they know I can't get out of my vehicle and stand on the edge. These are the things people get angry at, that you're getting funded, but are actually really massively vital for people that can't just get out and do things, you know, and it is a real serious problem. I mean, I think 3 years is a ridiculous amount of time to have to wait for somebody to actually make a decision with the information that was already on their desk, you know. And I didn't get an apology, and I didn't get anything back. They just said they changed their mind. That was it.
Disgusting. We could, honestly, guys, this is such a big topic, and I did have more questions, but unfortunately we've come to the end of the show. But I'm sure this topic will be spoke of a little bit more. Please tune in next week as we continue the topic of disability, as hopefully we have somebody very, very special of a parent coming on with a child suffering with Williamson's disease. And she describes what it's like to live with and how her son has made her who she is today, and her bucket tick list for her son that she really wants to complete. She's coming to make us a little bit more aware of that disease though. So please tune in next week. It's a very, very important show. That brings us to the end of the show. Vicky, I promise you disability will be back up again, and it will be a topic that we will not be quiet about. But thank you for joining us this week. Joining me on the panel and saying goodbye is Rob Price.
Hi, folks.
Jason Lambert and Vicky Pearson. Join us next week as we have a whole lot more conversation, a whole lot more